if you're going to keep cutting into buck stops here, I mean, I didn't realise that. I didn't realise that was.
Ray, when Cam Smith's in contention for a major, buck stops here will be interrupted.
Well,
Don't cut me off, mate.
I did have to stop there. Richmond. So they gave up 8 goals in the last quarter of the first round against Carlton, and then they gave up that 10-goal burst in the last 40 minutes against St Kilda. So they're the 2 times they haven't been able to arrest the momentum.
Okay, can I ask you this?
Yes.
Have you been consistent on Richmond? I mean, I'm saying I'm not one of those people who like to say, and I've probably done it previously, but the race to try and say that it's this and that and that. Have you said before that Richmond season? I want people to make up their mind on Richmond. Those that want to go a big call on them.
You can't. I don't think you need to make a big call. I think that if we're judging them on who they were in the past, they're not going to reach that. Because if they do,
so no premiership.
No, that doesn't. No, I'm not. I'm judging them on the team that they were. They're not going to be the team that they were. They've got players that are coming through now that have to. They have to remake their next challenging side,
and it's there in the making. You can see it.
So Vlosten, Grimes, Lambert, 3, gun players that aren't there at the moment. But I see, Shai Bolton's coming through further. The absolute want and competitiveness of a Baker and a Graham. Now, they were their top 2 in their BNF last year, I believe.
Yes.
And those guys, and Baker's in a different role to what he was in last year. When you see that hunger, when you see that fight, that's when you know that the club and the team is still in good shape.
Gibkiss comes in, so this is the rebranding.
So they're not going to do it the same way they did it before. They'll do it with new names. They'll do it with new players, and they've still got some parts of their game they need to fix.
Yep.
But I had them as a lock for finals.
So you're still with them? Obviously.
I think their trend line, the basis of their game has been really solid.
Yep.
There's still improvement in it, but it
was exciting to watch them on the weekend because it just added this whole different element. I've been listening to everyone. Oh, they're gone.
Everyone wants to jump early. It's ridiculous.
I know. But
and this is exactly why I love the evenness of the competition. I love the fact that when you come up against, when you look at the rounds, it's bloody hard to tip because you don't know exactly how players are going to roll out. You don't know exactly how the teams are going to come together, and the different motivations at different times. I think it's so marginal that the football that we're witnessing at the moment, even 4 rounds in, is very exciting. So the evenness of the competition has been great. And I'll finish with the quiet achievers of the competition. Now a rider on this is they haven't played much, but I reckon they could be the most balanced transition team in the competition. So offense and defense really closely aligned and effectively coached and executed, and that's Freo. And they beat the Dockers. They beat the GWS on the weekend. They're going under the radar a little bit, and I think that happens when you're over the other side of the country, and the other team from there has been a big story with the COVID and injury situation.
Yep.
But Fremantle have only given 90 points up from turnover in their first 4 games. The next closest side is 25 points away, and that's Melbourne.
Yep.
The next closest side after that is another 30 points away, and that's the Brisbane Lions. So Fremantle have given up 12 goals from turnover in the first 4 weeks.
And I know from a coaching point of view, it's something you take
That's enormous.
Of. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, there's only 3 teams that kick 35 goals or more from turnover. St Kilda have kicked 36, and
most of them yesterday.
And they actually kicked more points from turnover yesterday than they have in the first 3 weeks.
Over 100 points.
So, yeah, and they only had 86 points from turnover in the first 3 weeks. So that
says more about the Hawks, I think.
It does. Brisbane have kicked 36 goals from turnover also, and then Fremantle have kicked 35. So Fremantle have kicked 23 more goals. The differential in their turnover goals is 23 in the positive, which is nearly double the next team.
All right, and you're driving around, you're listening. Sometimes you can go, "Oh, that's a bit too much coach talk for me."
No,
but it's really insignificant, is what you're saying.
Well, look,
when you get a differential like that, is big.
They play the Giants, the Eagles, and the Crows, who are bottom 4 transition to turnover teams, and they played St Kilda, who are a top 3 team.
Yep.
I spoke to you about it before. So the top 6 teams in transition moment: Fremantle, Melbourne, St Kilda, Brisbane, Geelong, and Collingwood.
Yep.
So they're the top 6 teams, and all 6 of those teams are in the 8 at the moment. The teams that aren't are Sydney and Carlton. They're middle of the down a little bit, middle of the range. But this stacks up. If you're good, because it's 2/3 of scores.
Yep.
If you stack up there, you will always be in the game. The fact is that even their stoppage game will improve. Darcy's only played 2 out of the 4. Fife hasn't played any yet, so their stoppage will improve there. Mundy, Sarong and Taberner only played 2 of the 4 games, so there's a lot of upside there for Freo as well.
Great news for Fremantle supporters in the buck stops here. I'm looking at this top 4. Melbourne, Brisbane, Fremantle and St Kilda in there as well. So a couple of my takeaways. They're not nearly as important as the buck stops here, but a great weekend for the coasts. The West Coast and the Gold Coast were just superb. I did the West Coast game. All of the issues that they've dealt with says to me that Adam Simpson has this side in the palm of his hands because their effort was superb. And then the Gold Coast Suns against Carlton. We are... Just talk for a minute, Bucks, because I've got something I've got to do.
Oh, well, what I saw with West Coast was...
I had a cough button for the techo geniuses. Then I wouldn't need to say that. I apologise.
That goes in the ramble, mate, and that's before 7. What I reckon...
It's taken him 4 weeks. I tell you, he's going to get a backhander in a minute. Go on.
West Coast win came off the back of the way the coach handled the first 3 weeks.
That and the way they set up to defeat a team who have given every indication that they are go forward at all cost team. And they went forward, and then they've got the 2 greatest stoppers of go forward footy in the competition sitting there in McGovern and Barras.
Yep.
And it spooked the old Pies for a while. Gold Coast. Now, okay, so the win on the weekend I think is so meritorious. Noah Anderson, the good judges continue to tell me that we down here haven't quite grasped how good a player he is. When I say the good judges, these are people who coached him as a junior in the elite junior programs. They said he's as good as Real, if not better. This is from people close, which is a big rap. He had a game against this much celebrated Carlton midfield without Cripps, obviously, but they still had Walsh, they still had Cherry, they still had Kennedy, they still had Hewitt, and he owned them. So that was great. Now they're going, okay, this is real. Forget about Clarkson. This is Stuart Dew's team.
Who's they?
Oh, yeah, this is narrative.
This is us.
Narrative, yeah narrative. Mm. They're 2-2. They've been 3-2 for 4 of the last 6 years. They've been 3 wins, 2 losses in 4 of the past 6 years.
And they're not there yet.
So I don't think you can say this is real.
No. I spoke to Jared about it before the season began, and we did the stats. Up to round 5 on average, they win 2 of every 3 games. So it's actually around a 65% win ratio in the early stages of seasons. Yep. The problem is that when they have their first downturn, they can't arrest the negative momentum. And they only win 14% of the rest of the games in the season.
That's when we find out if it's real.
Well, and we will. And it won't be if say Gold Coast get to 4-2 and then lose a couple to back to 4-4, or they get sort of behind 50-50 in round 9 and 10. It's actually going to be what they do to win their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th games through the middle of the year. That's going to be the challenge, to make sure that they're not just got free fall, because free fall has been where they've gone and for a large part of the previous seasons. We can't have performances like last week either. They've got to improve their worst performances. And blokes like Anderson joining up consistently with a Miller and a Rowell and Weller and those guys through the middle of the field consistently, so their worst performance has got to be better as a team. And Gold Coast are the ones that they've got some obstacles to face, and it's really going to be a test for them.
North Melbourne go and play in the manner they did last week. Heat, spotlight, public lashing, coach publicly, go to training, don't drop everyone, give them a chance to. I'm at the other game getting ready and I'm watching with no commentary, and I know Jack Zeeble chased down tackle in the first quarter, but within 2 minutes I'm watching it going, attitude. And that's all people from North Melbourne or, commentary around North Melbourne care about. We know where they're at in their rebuild. Attitude, and they bought it, and they were magnificent against the Swans.
But this is the
challenge.
But it's how many times have you seen that happen?
Well, of course,
when a team gets smashed,
that's
you
what I'm
get a
fascinated.
response.
Why doesn't it happen?
Because we're human.
That's right. But where good teams do it.
No, but see, that's why we need to have a look at the good teams and go, how good are you?
That's right.
How do you maintain this level of competitiveness, this level of performance? And how do you win ugly? When the good teams do it, we should look at it and say, my God, how impressive is that? More than we do, because we see the alternative. We see that you get sides that and the emotional toil and the ups. It's a tough game. So to be going up and down the way that most sides do is that's more normal. What's abnormal is when you see a team like a Melbourne or a Brisbane or a Richmond or a Geelong over the years that can maintain that level of high performance, which is bloody hard to do.
No, it is. I don't for one second say it's easy, but I think it gets back to talent identification as well. I think you can go way back to the sort of player that you attract to your football club and what their qualities are and whether they're inherently competitive, because I know, and I'm only talking about Melbourne because they're the reigning premier, I know that was the cornerstone of what they wanted to do in terms of what sort of player they're attracting, and that is gap between...
This is North?
Melbourne.
Melbourne, yes.
Gap between their most competitive and, if you want to say, like North Melbourne last week, least competitive is tiny. And they say if you don't compete, you don't play, right? That's the Viney mantra that built this Melbourne's list. And it is the issue with Port Adelaide right now when I watch that game on the weekend, is they've got some people who don't compete hard enough for long enough.
I'll give you a little anecdote. I was watching Casey play our twos, would have been 6 or 7 years ago. Brendan McCartney was still had gone to Melbourne after being at the Dogs. I said, "Who's that guy there? He's bloody good player, Bailey Frisch." And he goes, "Oh, he's scared. He's scared."
Yeah.
And the reason he said that, because he knew how good he was, and he looked like he's showing glimpses, and he looked really good. And this was before he was on Melbourne's list.
Yeah.
But I mean, even a player like Frisch, who was an outside player, does flashy things, he still shows great courage in the air now, doesn't he?
When it's his time.
But what Brendan was talking about was obvious, but he was putting me right off the scent. Good on you.
Why can't you get a handle on the Saints? You just said that you're impressed with them. What is it that confuses you?
I thought that they would struggle without an intercept defender, and I thought that they would not have the depth in the midfield. Jack Sinclair has gone in and had to go in under pressure early on in the year and has continued to do well. They've just found a way, and admittedly we're talking about sort of one really strong four-quarter performance last week, but they haven't been poor round 2 and 3, and obviously where they sit on the ladder at the moment, you can only judge them as it. Max King's had a fantastic year to begin. Membry is going to keep coming, but they're playing better footy than I thought they were capable of.
So they were superb against Fremantle under duress. I thought that win was so good.
That, correct.
Hawthorn were shot. They were a shell of what they have been. And what happened within this game, with what I was watching from home, was that Hawthorn continued to play forward footy the way they did, and when it didn't work for them, they had no support. Now, there's much been made of their defence. One-on-one defence is got potential. It's got Sicily. It's got Jath. It's got Frost as a lockdown. It's got Scrimshaw. It continues to look good, but it just goes to show they're still some way off when they turn. And every defence is going to be under pressure when you turn the footy over like they did on the weekend. But there were gaps and holes everywhere. I reckon Sam Mitchell learns more about this side and coaching in that game than he would have for the previous 6 months.
Well, Hawthorn of the first 3 weeks was off the back of the ball use from their D50, and they spread the field and they make it big, and all of their players get involved in their offense from the back, especially their back. Their backs get in front of the ball and they spread the ground. When you play that way and you turn the ball over, you're open on turnover, which is why St Kilda went from scoring 86 points in turnover in 3 weeks to scoring 105 in 1 week against Hawthorn. And more to the point, Hawthorn had only given away 70 points on turnover, and then they give 105.
So here's the one question I've been wanting to ask you out of that game, right? Does Brad Hill play? So Brad Hill plays as the high half forward and has an impact, kicks 4 goals, one of his most impactful games, right?
Yep.
Does Brad Hill play like that because of the nature of the game, like Hawthorn's inability to defend turnover? Or did Brad Hill help to influence the game?
I think he helps.
Do you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say?
I wouldn't expect to see him back at halfback because it actually stunts his capacity to use his greatest strength. His greatest strength is his willingness to get all the way back and then the speed that he can get back in the front half of the field.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we saw him doing on the weekend.
I want to be ultra respectful because I don't want to. I'm not disrespecting what Brad did because he played beautifully.
No,
right?
I
what
agree
I want to know
I understand what you're
is
saying.
Can he do that?
It was an open game.
Yes.
It was there were turnover opportunities that he could potentially take advantage of and go from defense to offense quicker than anyone.
It was perfect for Brad.
It was.
The sun was. It was. The space was there. The turnover. You could react quick because you knew the footy was coming back. And again, you only play what's in front of you, and he played it beautifully. I want to know, can he do that? Who have they got next week?
Well, they've got Gold Coast, and that's going to be a big game. We're looking forward to that game because it's going to say a little bit for us. But he has his attributes that are very hard to coach against.
Yep.
Are actually attributes that are better used in that role, either a wing or a high forward role, than in the role that he was in. And I think Brett Ratton has seen that.
And it's unfair. I'm saying it's unfair on me. We question him when he doesn't play well. We shouldn't question him when he does. He was really good yesterday and well done. And the further question, the ancillary, we like to call it, you're the MRO. What happens to Paddy Ryder?
Now, I only saw that this morning. What other option? They'll say what other option did he have? And his Will Day was just, I can't believe a player could keep himself that open. I mean, there's going to be contact, and he just ran into him.
Could he
really
reasonably expect it to be there? That
to be contact? Yeah, I would have thought so. I don't think Paddy he didn't run through him.
No, he didn't.
All he did was turned. And this is what you see quite often when it comes to front on contact, or someone turns their body and braces for contact, and the other one doesn't.
So you're saying that what Day ran into Ryder?
I think so.
I don't. So,
do you think that he's in trouble?
Yep. Paddy's in trouble.
Do you think?
That's just my opinion.
And yeah, I don't fundamentally don't believe in legislating against the worst case scenario or for potential injury. And that's the slippery slope that we've got caught in. The game is got too soft if that's a suspension.
Well, I don't. My response to that is, if you read the articles over the weekend on concussion, then you can't be too soft.
I understand that, but you
he
cannot.
had an option, Bucks. He had an option.
You've often said that junior football should be played with everyone with helmets on.
Who said?
Have you said that?
No, I have
I've
not.
heard you say.
I said the team that I used to be involved with used to play with helmets on.
Oh, but you didn't agree with it.
No. Well, the research says that's not.
It doesn't.
That having a helmet doesn't help.
Yeah, I understand that, but we are not. We're not when it's not a non-contact game. It is not touch footy. We are going to have contact.
No, you know that. You know that.
But
I know
that. It's the medico-legal aspects of it that are under consideration consistently.
No, I think it's really interesting that. So you would think that what Paddy Ryder did was fine, and that Will Day was the one that was responsible for his own concussion test.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I disagree. I think that Paddy had the option to not do what he did, and that was only and it wasn't vicious. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination. And even he knew straight away that he went to help Will.
I know we've gone a little bit on this, but the thing is, should you reasonably expect contact in that circumstance? My thoughts are, when you go onto the football field, you should reasonably expect contact at nearly every point of the game.
To the head.
No, not to the head.
No, that's the point.
But see, that was the contact was to the body, and the head whiplashed down onto his shoulder.
I don't think if you looked at his chin, it would. Anyway, I'll stand corrected. It looked to me like he had a mark on his chin.